Cash-a-maniacs.
GeoGearHeads.
Welcome to the 247th installment of the GeoGearHeads. And for the fourth time now, we're going to be talking about 3D printed caches. I'm Daryl W4, back with my regular co-host, Chris of the Northwest. And, you know, Chris, I'm really upset, number one, that we have two Chris's on the show. But of the four people here, I'm the only one who doesn't have access to a 3D printer.
Well, you can fix that for a mere $200, Daryl.
I know. It's so tempting to try it. For $200, you know.
Do it.
Yeah, just go do it. You'll spend hours playing with it going, why won't this thing print the way, you know, that Chris or Jeff's prints look? And then you'll eventually figure it out, and then you won't have time to do anything with it anymore.
And I'll spend hundreds of dollars on the filament to make it happen.
Yeah, it could be. It's not that bad.
No, it's not.
No. Filament
That
isn't
sounds
like
about
it used
right.
to be. So, but we are thrilled, and I've already mentioned our guest. First, we have Chris Nelson with us.
How's it going?
Yes, and we have Antaeus with us.
Howdy.
And you've seen both of these people before, and you've seen them on 3D printed. Well, I wanted to say 3D printed shows, but that wasn't it. Shows about 3D printing. How's that? And so, thanks, guys, for joining us tonight.
You bet.
Thank you for having us.
Well, thanks for joining us again. And we're going to be talking about some of your favorite containers and things. And if I remember correctly, neither one of you is actually doing the modeling. You're just grabbing the stuff right off of some of the different services. Am I correct?
I think Antaeus is actually modifying them. I'm just borrowing his designs or whatever designs I find on Thingiverse.
Yeah, I still don't quite have the time to learn more in depth how to, mess with CAD programs. I'm trying. I just, life gets in the way.
Yeah, so kind of one of the points that we wanted to make tonight was you don't have to have those skills. You don't have to know what you're doing with the modeling to jump in and start 3D printing geocaches. And the first thing I thought of, everyone knows Thingiverse, I think, at this point. We've talked about it before. But I went to Thingiverse, did a search for geocaches, and came up with something like 80 different options. So, not all of those are going to be, usable as caches. A lot of them are like trinkets, like geocoin type things.
I think there's actually, I don't know, it's roughly around 50 of them are actual containers.
Okay, that's better than I was going to guess.
Yeah, it's not bad. And then you can do other searches like for a container, cache. There's ways of finding more than if you just type in geocache.
Right. But, you'll find a lot of cache containers, a lot of other cool stuff that you can just pretty much grab and print. And not everything prints necessarily the way it's intended. So why don't we start off the show by talking about some of the interesting containers, and of course we'll link to these in the show notes, that you two have found and printed. And Chris, you found one that's a cool little mushroom.
Yeah, the mushroom is really fun. It's basically two pieces, and I printed it in a light brown for the stem and a darker brown for the head, and it looks really neat.
So this is one that you're going to probably just put out, like under a tree or something.
I found stumps.
Oh, there you go.
It has
something that you'd expect to see the fungus growing, but I'm sure because it's a 3D printed cache, it's still going to stand out because it doesn't. It's made of plastic instead of fungus.
If you're walking by it, you would never notice. But if you're looking for it, yes, it does stick out a little bit at that point.
I saw that. It's awesome. I really want to do it, but I'm tempted. What are those little mushroom dudes in Super Mario Brothers? I'm tempted to paint it like that. That would be cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
Goombas?
But then, yes, that's right.
Wow, I don't know what brain cell that came from.
Those
I
died.
Now,
well, I'm pretty sure you could actually find those.
How big is that head on that mushroom?
Probably about like that, I would say.
So about 3 inches?
Yeah.
3 inches diameter?
3 to 4.
Okay.
And the stem
is decent size.
The stem is probably, I don't know, 4, maybe 4.5 inches. And the stem actually has at the bottom, what I did was I cut the head off of a screw and screwed it back into the body, and then you can just screw it right into something, and it's dead attached at that point.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So harder for someone to walk away with.
Well, if it gets brushed against, it's going to stay put.
I was going to ask, we've heard a lot of stories of the 3D printed caches, and I've heard many 3D caches being placed. I've never actually run into one in the wild. But we've heard a lot of stories of the 3D caches getting stolen. I assume both of you have put a few of these out now. Have you had issues with the caches disappearing more than, like your film can type hides?
The only ones I've had go missing are the cryptexes.
I have not had any stolen that I think, or that I'm aware of. I think one of them got washed away in a flood, but that was about it.
That would definitely be a problem.
Yeah, I think it's better to have it washed away than stolen. It would just get under my skin that somebody took it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, and those kind of problems have nothing to do with it being a 3D printed cache. And we're hearing problems with the ammo cans going missing quite frequently lately.
Yeah.
People want the old-fashioned real ammo cans because it's not something that you get. So they're walking off with those.
Well, and the other thing, too, is, people who are new to caching, how many travel bugs go missing every year?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, and I think, I think, Chris, you were talking in one of the previous shows that you usually try to print 2 of each one so that you'll have a backup.
Yes. When especially for something that's complex like this, takes 13 hours to print all the pieces. So having a spare one on hand, this is actually one I have to replace right here, one of the ones that went missing. So
yeah, one of the cryptexes.
Yep.
Now, did you have that ready just in case?
Yep.
Oh, you plan ahead way too far.
Well, it's probably easier to print 2 at once. Just, once you've got everything set up and working, just do it.
Yeah, I print, it takes, let's see here, 14, there's like 17 parts, and I can print in the whole thing in three passes with basically filling the whole bed at that point.
Nice. So it doesn't take that long, really.
Well, it takes 13 hours, but it's so many pieces all at once.
Yeah, and then you have to go and assemble it.
I still haven't hid mine. Got it working perfectly, though. I had to sand it quite a bit.
Well, it seems like the first thing a lot of people want to do with the 3D printed caches are the cryptex. Is it cryptex?
Yep.
The very first one that I printed was one of the maze containers.
Monkey puzzles?
Yeah, well, if you look on Thingiverse, I think it's called the Amazing Puzzle Box, something like that.
Oh, yeah.
And, you're turning the outside of the container through a path, trying to find the correct path to open it up. So I guess it's kind of like a monkey container. But that guy's been out in the elements the longest for me, and it has taken quite the beating. the nub. I think I told you guys this before. The nub on the inside that goes along that path. That thing like snapped off maybe the third or fourth finder. And so eventually I just put in a bolt and cut it down so that it, I thought that it wouldn't rip through the internal container or portion, but it's pretty much torn it up. So I got to totally redo that sucker.
All right. Now, you also had done a cache for one of our listeners that you'd given him as a prize. And it's not one of those things that's going to be listed as a cache on Thingiverse.
Correct. Yeah. So it took me a while to do this, but the winner was DSV Music. So I reached out to him and asked him, what are some of his hobbies? What are some of the things that he enjoys? And obviously, you can kind of tell by his caching name, music was one of them. So I asked him what his favorite instrument was, and turned out it's drums. So I initially was trying for a very long time to get a drum set container. The bass drum would be where the actual container was. It had his name on the front of it, like you would with a band name or something. But man, I just could not get it to work properly. I mean, it was just too weak, the poles, all that stuff, just too thin. And then when I tried to thicken it, it just didn't look right. So I finally said, you know what? He's got a pretty cool profile picture of a guitar. And so I found a guitar. It's actually a pick container for guitar picks. And it's got two magnets in it that hold the drawer in. And so I had my wife paint it to look as close as she could get to his profile picture. And I think it really turned out pretty awesome. I mean, you have to have a container within the little drawer because that's not going to be watertight at all. But you can put a smaller container in there; it'd be good to go. And I posted pictures in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll link to those on the. Actually, do you have the? Does he have those on those? Let's see. On his profile. It's not going to let me because I'm not logged in from this machine. So we'll figure out some way to get those available so people can check them out. But you also had one that you don't suggest people do for a geocache.
Yeah. Okay, so just as somebody who 3D prints, you spend a lot of time on Thingiverse, right? I mean, you want to find stuff to print. You're looking for something cool you can use for that next cache hide. And I think I was searching for containers and came across a grenade container. There's always the bomb scares and stuff like that. You don't want to put out a container like this. That's just asking for trouble.
Definitely. Limax in the chat room is asking if you could print something like a Hungarian puzzle box, and I'm not sure what that is. I'll have to look that up.
Well, Daryl, a little farther down in the show notes, that's what I was Googling while you guys were talking, and I found one on shapeways.com.
Oh,
it's
very
a
cool.
Centrifugal puzzle box.
Oh, weird.
Yeah. Everybody's looking now.
Yeah, now there's going to be a strange silence. Yeah. Actually, I have printed one almost just like that. And it's funny, I put a container similar to that in the show notes. So what you do is you spin it around. There's maybe ball bearings or BBs in there, and you have to spin it a certain way in order for those ball bearings to move into little compartments so that you can open up the container. Well, I would say that might have been maybe the second container that I printed, the ball bearings in there, and I cannot open it to this day. I have tried. There's at least or two in there that just won't go into that little compartment when you spin it. So obviously I didn't clean it up well enough. Maybe my settings on the print job weren't, I probably didn't even look at the instructions. I probably needed to do it at a smaller, can't think of the term right now.
Resolution?
Yeah, pretty much. It's going to bother me now that I'm
Of course, it's always one of those
forgetting the carry on.
Yeah. But Shapeways is interesting because it's stuff for sale, so you can always go and send your models up there to be printed if you had something that you wanted to do. But there's a lot of stuff there that they've already done, and they have the commercial grade stuff, and they actually do some like metal printing and whatnot too, so you can do stuff that you can't do with like your home printer.
Printing isn't that expensive to get into. Now, we're talking about a $200 entry-level printer. But, if you want something printed, there are services that you can go to, like Shapeways there, that you can go and have it contracted to be made. And, most of the people are going to charge you by the filament and time, and it's really not that expensive.
Yep. 3D hubs, for example.
Mm-hmm.
You can find somebody local to you that prints, and just submit, find that file and send it to them, and they'll tell you how much it costs and if they can get it to you.
So definitely a good way to get started if you want to play with it without learning to 3D print or anything, and see if it's something that you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I just want the 3D printer because I know I'm going to want to print everything. Just one of everything on Thingiverse, please. All right.
Oh God, I think there's over 200,000.
Yeah. I don't think that even like a stable of like 10 of those cheap printers are going to be able to print Thingiverse.
How much is
it's going to keep?
That? Yeah.
Well, it's going to keep growing. By the time you get the first 100 done, there's going to be like 200 more things added.
Oh yeah, and those customizable objects that are on there, you can look at one of those items, and then there's like maybe 500 more that are just like it, customized in some small way.
Yeah. Yep. But there are some containers, Jeff, that you mentioned that you really want to try for cache containers, and the first one that you have on this list really intrigues me because it's for 120 film. Which, I've got a bunch of cameras that take 120. I love the medium format stuff. So I'm thinking I want one of those containers just for the film.
Yeah, you could do that, or you can hide a geocache. It's Daryl's got to go out there and hide some more, right? Just like you, Chris.
Yeah, I've got to find spaces available. I don't know
what you mean. I don't have anything to go hide.
That's exactly what I mean.
No,
seriously.
I've got containers. I've got to find the spaces that aren't. You go and hide a cache. Oh, I'm sorry. There's a final too close to that.
Right. Yeah. Well, this container, it is designed so that there are spaces for 2 O-rings. So, which is pretty awesome. I don't think I've ever seen any other container that's like that. So I haven't printed this one out yet. It's going to be one of the first ones I print. Except for maybe another one further down. And I'm going to test this one out pretty soon.
Cool. Also in the chat, we've got a couple of our viewers saying that you should definitely check out the maker spaces. And that's definitely a good thing if you're just getting into 3D printing, or if you're experienced with 3D printing. It's like-minded people who can give you a lot of help that, doesn't cost you a whole bunch.
Mm-hmm. Or you can look into those, what is it called, meetup.com.
Right.
Yep.
I know there's always one here in town, once a week, I think, or once every other week that meet.
Very cool. Some great options. You just have to go and do a little research and find out what's available in your neck of the woods. All right, so moving on, you had a couple more that you wanted to try out.
Yeah, so I found a couple that are pretty recent. So obviously I haven't had a chance to print these yet. But they're made by a guy in the Netherlands, and he posted these in July of this year. And they have spaces for magnets. They have spaces for the O-rings. They have the geocaching symbol on them. Just really well designed. I actually wouldn't mind talking to this guy. Maybe it's somebody that you might be able to get on the show sometime. I wonder if he's a geocacher. I mean, that is really well designed.
Well, if he's putting the geocaching logo on it, it's probably a pretty good chance that he's a geocacher.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's very cool. Yeah, I like the idea of having the spots for the magnets in there, and then I'm assuming you drop in the magnet, and I can't really tell from the images here, but I know that you do some of these where you'll like print part of it, pause the print, drop in the magnet, and then it finishes a print around that.
Yeah, in this case, it's on the side of the container, and you just glue the magnet in.
Yep, hot glue.
Yeah.
So not necessarily as strong as if it were printed into it, but a lot easier.
Oh, yeah.
One of those two uses a soda bottle lid.
Have you tried any of those?
Haven't tried them yet, no.
So I have, that's often, I printed a ton of those out. And I put them in a seed cache that I have. And I hid one myself with those. And it's great at first. It's watertight, but over time, one of them, and probably the 3D print, is probably shrinking a little bit from the elements. Mm-hmm. And so that it just doesn't have, maybe 6 months into it, it just doesn't have that water tightness anymore. So not a very good container to do.
No. Oh, well, and we'll talk about some new filament and stuff that might help with that kind of stuff. But let's go through some of these other models first. There's also some puzzle boxes that you were looking at doing.
Yeah, so actually we kind of touched on it earlier with that Hungarian puzzle box. Similar concepts, you're spinning it to get it to open up. But this one I think may actually be a little bit better designed than the first one I went with. I'm hoping that I can actually print it out and be able to open it. That'd be nice.
That's kind of the whole point, isn't it?
Yeah, I got to get to that log. But it's a, I guess you can maybe call it a small size cache. It's kind of on the high end of micro, I guess, but it's a good size container, and plenty of room inside for looks like for coins and a log and all that.
Yeah,
it looks like it's a couple of inches tall and maybe 3 inches square.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say that does look like a good one to throw people for a loop with like the LPCs, because it looks like it might be small enough to fit under a lot of those skirts.
It might be.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so many fun containers, that you can put out there, and you just don't have enough time to do all of this.
Yeah, definitely. And then the next one that you had on the list just looks like it's a simple unscrew.
Kind of. It's just that you have to, the way that it's made, it looks like the top of the container is what you unscrew, but there's a little trick to it underneath. There's a little slot for you to put a coin in, and so it's actually the underside of the container that you're unscrewing with that coin. Pretty cool.
Then another one I know many of our listeners are going to be thrilled with, and that's a brick cache.
Yeah, the Lego. You don't want to say, is that like YouTube's gonna like come and get us now that I said Lego?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
We've got a number of Lego fans in the audience, so I'm sure many of them were going to start looking for that cache. But it looks like that's just, it's a 3D printed Lego brick. Then it has a pull out for the log.
Yep.
And an indent for a magnet.
Yes, very cool. This is the one that I think I'm going to go with printing first. It's just got to find some way of hiding it. Make some sort of Lego, object and hide it in the middle of it or something. Just be really evil.
Well, I've seen a few Lego. I haven't actually seen them in person, but I've seen photos of the Lego geocache containers where someone's taken Legos, glued them together, and made a little container.
Yeah, we have.
Of course, there's a little ammo can kit that you can get from geocaching.com. I think that might be out of stock now. But, there's all kinds of stuff like that. It would be pretty easy, I think, to build it in if it actually works. But Limax would actually like to have one of those Lego printed or 3D printed Lego caches.
Yeah, those are awesome.
John Gardner says he's a Lego fan. He has a Lego field puzzle cache.
Ooh, I wonder how that works.
There's one in the area here that's a birdhouse, and you have to count the number of specific color bricks to open a lock on the bottom of it.
We have one similar to that. It would be so neat if I could just go, stick this one right underneath. Too bad I can't, publish it.
But Limax says that he's found a Lego cache and it was an LPC. Good place for those because it's not exposed to the elements. And then they're talking about the Lego cache, and hopefully we'll get a GC number in there. But we were talking about some of the other services, and you actually found a really cool looking cache container on Umagine, I think is how that's pronounced.
Yeah. Waiting for it to load here. So, I was talking about earlier the amazing puzzle cache that I printed, my first print. It's time for me to replace that guy. So I'm thinking this one here, it's called the GeoCache puzzle container. It's same idea. It's a maze. You have to follow the path to open up the container. But it's designed, not only does it have geocache written on the outside of it, but it's designed with like a little holder for the pin, a holder for the log.
Yeah, if you read the notes on it, though, you don't want to put a pen in there.
Yeah, I saw that. But, if you clip it on, maybe, but then there's bound to be somebody who just tosses it in there and, it gets stuck. Yep. Yeah.
The other thing I have found with this one, I had one of these put out. People don't put it back together. They can't because it's hard both
so difficult
taking it up, opening it and closing it, that they never get it all the way shut, and so it sits halfway closed, and then you have to go out there and reset it again.
Yep, I've had to do that.
That is a big problem, and that's bad cachers, we'll call them.
Yeah, that puzzle is actually pretty challenging.
It is.
I got to the point where I could do it without looking at it, but it's challenging enough that, there's a couple places in there that if you don't go the right direction, you can't get it all the way closed. It'll get close, but it won't close all the way.
This particular container?
Yep.
Wow. Oh, that's disappointing. If you go to the page for this container, they actually have a little cheat sheet there, so it's one of the pictures. So if you are aware of these websites, you can easily go browse to this while you're out there, from your phone, and look at the right path for you to take to open it up.
Yeah, if you take a look at where it's like, 1, 2, 3 rows up, if you take the left path rather than the right path, you can't get it all the way closed.
Oh yeah, I see what you're saying. Yep.
And if at the very top, like the second from the top, if you go to the right rather than to the left, again, you'll get it to the bottom, and it will be at that bottom one that's one above, so it just sits there, not all the way closed.
You can always modify that, though, just a little bit, so that they can't, like on that bottom portion, so they can't just go down that path.
Yeah, you probably could modify it to do that, but at that point, then you're kind of giving it away, too.
Yeah. Well, darn, I was really excited about this container.
It's a good container, and it's challenging, but people won't be able, not everybody will be able to get it back together.
Right.
All right, so Johnny Be Good in the chat room has posted the URL for that Lego
With the
puzzle
GC
cache.
number.
Yeah. So I'm put that in there. I'll have that in the show notes for anyone who wants to check it out. But it's called Not Just for Kids.
GC41 Victor Echo 2.
Only 1,300 miles away.
You could go. You're going to go on a vacation soon. Just swing on by.
It's the opposite direction.
Oh, that's what vacations are for. Going a little bit out of your way just to find a cache. That's a little too much, huh?
2,000 miles, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that's been an issue with the 3D printed caches has been the materials aren't really designed to withstand the elements. And there's been a lot of talk on the 3D Printing Today podcast, which is the only 3D printing podcast that I happen to listen to, which is why I keep quoting it. But they've been really hot on this new dishwasher safe PLA that's apparently come out. They haven't worked with it to really know what it's like, but they're really excited about the concept. And my thought is, if this is a dishwasher safe material, it's probably going to hold up better in the elements than the traditional PLA that most people are using. And then when I started looking around for links to put into the show notes, I actually found a nylon, which most printers won't do without modification. And then something else called a ColorFab HT, which is a high temperature filament. So there's some definite options to explore. And Chris, I know that you said you hadn't tried it. Jeff, have you tried any of these new higher temperature PLAs or whatnot?
I have. So I've got a box here of PLA PHA, and it's supposed to be a little more weather resistant than your normal PLA. And, I really have not had any trouble with, the elements causing a problem with my containers.
Are you printing PLA?
I am printing PLA. I seal most of the time I paint them, and then I seal them with the Krylon Crystal Clear to protect them, and that's supposed to weatherproof things. So maybe that has something to do with it. But PLA is not going to break down for a very, very long time. I know. I listen to that same podcast, Daryl, and they oftentimes mention, leaving some printed object in the car and it melting, or at least deforming somehow. I've never had that problem. I have containers in my car, and they are. I live in Texas, and it's 110 degrees sometimes. I have never had a problem. So I don't know.
Well, if I remember, the problem that you've seen on some of the containers has been the moisture, not so much the temperature in the sun.
That is true. Yeah. So, some of the containers aren't designed to be, watertight. So, you're going to have, if you don't do something to take care of that problem, like seal it with the Krylon, you're going to have that issue.
I've had heat issues before, but not with caches. Caches generally, most of those types of things have a thicker wall to them. But I had a mount for my phone in my car, and I went to put my phone in it one day. Actually, we were visiting relatives down in Texas, and it had melted.
Wow.
So instead of vertical, it was holding it horizontal.
Wow.
And that was just standard PLA?
Yeah, that was standard PLA. I reprinted it in ABS. ABS is not something that's that difficult. Most printers that can print PLA can print ABS. The temperature difference between the two of them isn't that great. And if you can print ABS, it won't have any problem with the elements, the sun or water. It's impervious pretty much to both.
Right, but as I recall, the ABS is a little bit more difficult to get to print unless you have like the heated build plates.
Yeah, it is. Some people put a box over the top of their printer to hold all the heat in, but the heated build plate is standard on most printers now. So if you're buying a printer nowadays, pretty much anything that you buy is going to have a heated build plate.
And for people who don't know, because there are a lot out there, Chris, can you give us a breakdown real quick of the difference between the two? You know, what is a PLA and what is the ABS?
PLA is polylactic acid. It's a corn-based product, actually, and it's basically a corn-based plastic. And you'll find a lot of they combine it with a lot of things. They have some things like they call it lay brick and lay wood and lay ceramic, and what they do is basically suspend particles of wood or ceramic in the plastic itself, and so you can print out something that's actually brick-like, and it'll have maybe a 20% or 20% of the ceramic or the brick or something like that, and the rest will be the plastic.
Well, and I've heard of the same thing with metal.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but they'll put the metal in there so that it gives it the look of like a chrome or a copper or something like that.
Bronze.
And then, carbon fiber. There's some of those.
Yep.
And what I've heard on that is a carbon fiber does look cool, but it doesn't really add anything to the rigidity. So don't think you're going to get anything that's stronger.
Because you're not laying it down in parallel, it's just however it comes out.
Right. And then, Jeff, you mentioned PET, but before we get to that, ABS is basically the stuff that like Lego bricks are made out of.
Yep.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then what is PET, Jeff?
You're going to ask me to try to pronounce the actual...
Not necessarily. Just tell us what it is and why. And...
So PET is the plastic that, say, your Coca-Cola bottle's made out of. I was going to ask if Chris has printed anything with PET.
Yeah, I haven't had any luck with it. Here's some PET right here. It's almost crystal clear when you look through it.
Yeah.
I've had some problems with it. It's supposed to be very strong, and I've been having layer issues where it'll delaminate really easily. So I'm doing something wrong with it.
Temperature, maybe?
Well, yeah, and it's got a range of 220 to 260. So finding the exact right temperature to print it at is kind of difficult to do.
But, PET is not biodegradable. So, it's going to be stronger than if you printed with PLA. So that's a good option if you can get it to print.
Which does take a little bit more. And I don't know that all printers, kind of like with the nylon, which is another material, not all printers can print with the nylon without necessarily doing some upgrades.
Right. Yep.
The extruders, a lot of them now are pretty much limited to 230 to 240 if you've got an MK10 extruder, because they use, I can't think what the name of the stuff is, but they have the plastic travels through a Teflon tube, and the Teflon tube is the insulator to keep the filament solid before it hits the tip where it melts. And the Teflon tube can't handle 260 degrees, for instance, for the PET or 270 for the nylon, that type of thing.
Yeah, so there's good reason for it, certainly, but that does limit your material selections.
A $40 drop-in all metal hot end is, it's 15 minutes to put that in and $40, and you're on the road printing whatever you want.
Yep. So this is one of the reasons why this is not yet a toaster. You can't just buy a printer and go. You have to know a little bit about it, know how to get it to work, but it's a lot of fun. And I think both of our guests and even our co-host here, Chris, have really grown to enjoy the challenge of 3D printing. Am I right?
Yes.
Definitely.
Oh, yeah.
And, like anything, it's a hobby, and you go, well, it's kind of like souping up a car. There's always something else that you could get for your 3D printer. Maybe it's a different hot end or two, or a feeder, or, it's always something that you can say, well, if I get this, then I could do X, Y, or Z. So.
Yeah, I've heard some people refer to it as this is the same days as the build your own computer, or a lot of the ways that people play with the RC cars. It's always you put this thing together and then you're constantly upgrading and tweaking, and it's learning how to get the best performance out of it.
Well, you can buy a $200 kit where you get to put everything together if you want.
Right, and then over time you start replacing the parts to make it a little bit more versatile, maybe a little bit more accurate. One of the things they were talking about on the latest 3D printing today was replacing the, I think it was the gantry arms were injection molded on one of the printers, and they switched them out to aluminum arms, and it improved the
rigidity.
Yeah, so they don't have to level the bed as often. Just little things like that. It's fine if you're not printing very much, but now that you're going to be printing all the time, you spend some money and upgrade.
Yeah.
But several of our listeners will be just thrilled with an out-of-the-box printer.
Oh yeah, yeah, and that's what I'll probably end up with when I finally decide to do one. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. I really love some of these containers, and if I had a printer, it would be running right now.
I was actually thinking if I could schedule a print to finish just as we started, or just a few minutes after we started, so you would see it moving back here.
There you go.
I don't know about you, but my printer is really loud.
I got new fans for it, Noctua fans, and just like he was talking about, new and better.
Yeah.
And the only thing that makes a noise now is are the stepper motors. That's it. So it's actually nice and quiet.
One of the things that I've heard complaints on is the odor from the melting of the filament. Is that something that you guys have run into?
You might get a little bit of that if you're printing in ABS, but PLA just smells like corn syrup.
Yep.
So it makes you hungry.
I've heard PLA can smell a bit like popcorn even sometimes. So,
yes. Yep.
I've never walked into the office with going, oh yeah, 3D printing. I don't smell a thing with the new PLA that I'm using, but.
Yeah, if you're printing ABS, I think you probably want to have a little airflow in there. The windows open. Yeah.
Yeah, I think nylon was supposed to be really bad too.
Yeah, ABS and nylon, they put enough particulates in the air that you probably want to have that sitting outside, like in the garage or something. Yep. You might have to build a garage for some people, but
you could 3D print your own garage.
Oh my gosh. That would take a very long time.
Oh, I'm talking for a Matchbox car.
I don't know if you've seen it, but there's actually a guy who 3D prints in cement.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Wow. Well, yeah. I've seen that.
Did you see the guy who built the 3D printer for sand in his backyard?
Oh, I have not seen that one.
I saw something, but he's building like sand castles in the backyard, like big like walk through them sandcastles.
Wow.
I thought that was pretty cool.
It's the same idea. As long as you can pass something through an extruder.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Be it cement or sand, it's got to be able to set up on the other end. But, you just sit there and build layer upon layer, and off you go. It's a lot like designing a Lego house when you were a child or even an adult. You start with one layer, and then you add another, and then you add another. Except the layers are a lot smaller with 3D printers. And they don't necessarily interlock. But other than that...
So really you're saying it's nothing like building with Legos?
Yeah, it's nothing like it. No. Except the layers of Lego that you have to use. Yeah.
All right. Jeff, you're actually going to be on a special limited access edition of Podcaster coming up.
Yeah. So I guess their next, what they call a map show, member appreciation premium perk, I think.
Something like that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm going to be talking to them tomorrow. So
excellent.
For that, maybe this weekend.
Any secrets as to what's going to be in that show?
Just, talking about 3D printing.
Very good. And then how can people find you on the interwebs?
Best way is just email me at gcanteus@gmail.com.
And then Chris, anything that you want to share?
Not really. I've got a trail of 30 printed caches near Sioux Falls, where I'm about 100 miles south of the Mecca, Watertown, where there's like 5,000 caches or so. But we've got a path out there of them.
And of course, we'll link to both of your geocaching.com profiles in the show notes. Well, we've got a number of great shows coming up still. On September 29th, we're going to be talking puzzles once again with Jennifer of Team AJK. So if you have any last-minute questions, you can still get them in probably. Not too much because, that's just next week. And then the week after, we're going to have yet another randomized show. So got some interesting questions already for that one, some feedback, and some news that isn't going to make Chris of the Northwest very happy.
What could that be? Don't make me angry.
You're not.
When I'm angry.
You're not going into space. That's the news. You're never going to find that cache. And then on the 13th, we're going to be doing another road caching show with the Land Monkeys. Both of them are going to be on. All two. And then finally, well, not finally, I guess, because we're going to be doing another one after that, I'm sure. But October 20th is going to be GPSR Picking 2. After that last show we did with Land Monkey and Scott Burks, we've had a lot of feedback, a lot of people interested in getting GPSRs again. So it's time to revisit this. Almost a year since the last time we did this. And Limax is going to be joining us, and he's actually looking at some cool units too. So that should be another really interesting show for anyone who's interested in a GPS or knows someone interested in buying a GPSR.
I love it. But until then, be sure to check the Cachemaniacs website at cachemaniacs.com for more on the GeoGearHeads, including show notes from this and all our episodes. We love hearing from our listeners, so leave us feedback by emailing GeoGearHeads at cachemaniacs.com or through the many channels of social media. Your support helps keep the Cachemaniac shows coming. Please consider becoming a patron through the link on our website to support the Cachemaniac shows. GeoGearHeads is produced by Chris Umfenauer and Daryl Wattenberg. The show's copyright 2016 by Daryl Wattenberg. All rights reserved.
Cash with the Cachemaniacs.